My name is Walter Timmins. In 1952, after graduation from the School of Naval Photography in Pensacola, Florida, I was assigned to the photo lab of the aircraft carrier Essex, which was in Korean waters when I arrived in Japan via troop ship. I was temporarily quartered in a tent city at the former Japanese naval base at Ykosuko until the Essex returned from the war zone. When maintenance and provisioning were completed, we departed from Ykosuko until the next visit. The following pictures were taken by me with my personal camera while serving in the Essex Photo Lab. The Essex was my home for the next 3 years until I was discharged in 1955. It was the second best thing in my life. The Korean police action was still in progress when I boarded the Essex in 1952. Japan was the major destination for liberty between patrols in Korean waters and the favorite liberty port of nearly everyone. We docked at the former naval base at Ykosuko. Although it's not likely that these ladies were giving us a spontaneous greeting as we docked, I'm sure that the local merchants were glad to see us. It was interesting to see how they seemed to be stocked with the appropriate goods. Whenever we docked, Essex t-shirts had already replaced Yorktown t-shirts. This Japanese traffic cop was something to watch. He looked at me and saluted when he saw me taking his picture. The Enlisted Men's Club was a good place to go. Swabi could buy things there such as food, drinks, and could exchange his military scrip for yen, which he needed to buy things from the local merchants. The free movie this night was Prisoners of the Casbah. After several days, sometimes weeks at sea, it was good to get off the ship. For most of us, Japan was the most exotic place we had ever been to. It was an opportunity to see interesting things and meet interesting people. The Japanese people often carried things on their backs. It was a common sight to see men carrying babies on their backs. Here's an interesting person. There were always plenty of pedicabs hanging out near the Enlisted Men's Club. It was impressive how these skinny little men could pedal a couple of swabbies around Ykosuko. The Japanese people were generally quite cooperative about having their pictures taken. Many of them seemed to actually enjoy it. This young lady is standing on the deck of a ship that the Japanese captured during the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 and 5. It was a feature of a park which also included a small zoo. Of all the photogenic things, people were the most interesting to me. The Japanese are able to adapt to the modern world without discarding the traditional.
기대려 기니 나를 내어도 이와 이 안에 와서도 내어도 이와
Take a close look at that bandana over her head. Look familiar? This is the same person. She had to run inside and change her dress when she saw me taking her picture. Pennants are flown on the holidays for boys. They represent strong fish swimming upstream. The bars, restaurants, and shops that attracted most servicemen were concentrated near the main gate of the naval base. A great many Swabbies seldom got beyond this area. The background music is a song called China Night. I have no idea what the words mean, but it was very popular with American servicemen. How much you speak for the one in the back, Mama-san?
Have special price for you, 5,000 yen.
No way, Mama-san. Maybe 2,000 yen.
Never happen. I speak maybe 4,000 yen.
Goodbye, Mama-san.
Wait, I like you, 3,500.
I'll go 3,000.
You crazy. My family starved. Okay. Thank you. Come again.
Fresh fish. This fellow would paint a picture from any photograph you would bring him. These ladies will look much nicer when they start work in the evening. How could one ever forget these two guys? With harmonicas mounted on their guitars, they would make the rounds of the bars in Ykosuko and perform. They only knew one song, You Are My Sunshine, which they sang, You amo sunshine, ma ore sunshine. If you gave them some money, they would go away and stop bothering you.
Hee-haw!
Here I am at the entrance to the Himashita Hotel, where my division was having a party, complete with booze, Japanese food, and traditional Japanese entertainment. My two shipmates and the photographer have already had too much to drink, as I have, because I have no idea what I'm eating. This is the traditional part of the entertainment. This is a blending of the traditional with the modern. This must be the part that's not traditional. Liberty is always good, but it always ends too soon, so it's back to work for the Essex. We had to relieve the Yorktown in the combat zone so it could have liberty in Ykosuko. Here we are, back with Carrier Task Group 2, and there goes the Yorktown on its way to Ykosuko, where the shops are probably already displaying Yorktown t-shirts. I came aboard the Essex fresh out of photo school in Pensacola, Florida, and I had no idea what to expect. Many of the photographers in the photo lab hadn't been to photo school, so at times I thought that too much was expected of me, but I needn't have worried. Darkroom work was only part of the job. Here I am with a rapid sequence camera covering flight operations and getting in a few shots with my own personal camera. Its mission accomplished, this returning formation has tailhooks lowered. Look closely. Here's one of our photo planes. One of our planes flamed out and went in the drink as he was on his approach. This tin can picked him up and returned him to the Essex just in time as the weather was starting to get rough. This day, everyone returned safely. These black and white photographs were taken by the photo plane. This is what it looks like to a pilot as he's coming in to land on the carrier's deck. "46 days was the longest time the Essex spent in the war zone while I was aboard. Shipboard life wasn't all that bad, but everyone looked forward to liberty. As we returned to Ykosuko, we quickly processed our film and had time to goof off while on our way back. My buddy Horoho and I took pictures of each other on the flight deck. I'd just made petty officer 3rd class, and I felt like I owned the ship. Our Marine contingent enjoys liberty as well as any of us, but they are a gung-ho bunch. They all have duty stations during battle, but they spend a lot of time with spit and polish. They can be a little bit hard to take at times, but you gotta admire them. There were both jets and props on the Essex when I came aboard. When the props had not yet been completely replaced by jets, they would be lined up opposite each other and their engines alternately revved up in order to help the tugs with the docking. Our welcoming committee is on hand as we dock, and you can count on the Essex t-shirts already being on display in Ykosuko. So much for the secrecy of our ship movement. We had 3-section rotating liberty while in port, which meant that one section had the duty while the other 2 had liberty. This photographer had the duty today. This one is dressed for liberty today, but will be wearing his work clothes tomorrow. My buddy and I decided to hike into the countryside beyond the business section. There isn't a lot of flat land in Japan, so this neighborhood is laid out on one side of a ravine. Not a rare thing. Most of the brush this lady is clearing from the hillside will be turned into charcoal for cooking and heating. Japan's mountainous topography makes it necessary for them to have a lot of small farms instead of the vast, flat, irrigated food factories that we have in the United States.
山越えて今宵は
A common sight in Japan is this gate called a torii, which I was told marks the entrance to a sacred place. I was intrigued by these houses. They weren't what I imagined the average Japanese would live in. I liked their looks.
来るじゃないの
Considering the fact that we didn't know where we were at or where we were going, we thought it was a good idea for us to head back to the ship. It's just not true that wherever you go, there is always someone who speaks English, and neither of us had learned enough Japanese yet to do more than ask where the restroom was. Japanese trains are everything trains should be. They're fast, cheap, and on time. These rail workers actually asked me to take their pictures. These school kids were being led in calisthenics when we came upon them. When the teacher saw us up on the hillside, he turned them around to face us, and together they all bowed to us. Naturally, we bowed back. The natto man showed a series of pictures that tell a story. Then, partway through the story, he stopped and gave them the opportunity to buy refreshments. Then he finishes the story. I would be surprised these days if he could compete with television. Now here's an impressive way to make your final trip to the cemetery. This fellow was either a holy man or a politician, because he held out his hand for a donation. I had the duty the next day, but the following day a shipmate and I rented bikes so we could cover more ground. We learned that the Japanese bikes have smaller seats than our American physiognomy is used to. Our first goal was a small but historic village, 6 kilometers from Ykosuko. On the way, it seemed like no matter where we pointed a camera, there was something beautiful to take pictures of. The only notable thing about the village of Kurihama was this monument. Japan had isolated itself from the rest of the world for centuries when Admiral Perry dropped anchor with his warships and politely suggested that the United States and Japan should get to know each other better. The Japanese took the hint, and within less than a century advanced from horses and swords to trains and aircraft carriers. The monument, so I'm told, remained standing during World War II. Japan depends largely on imported food for its sustenance, but it raises most of its own rice. It's a lucky person who loves their job. Do you suppose 1 ox power is equivalent to 1 horsepower? When you see this guy coming, you'd best cross over to the other side of the street. He was the night soil man. His job was to dip out the contents of privies and cart it away for disposal elsewhere. I really don't know what this parade was all about. If I learned anything about Japan, it was not to be too sure about anything. This portable shrine was careening all over the road, but they didn't run into anything and everyone seemed to be having a good time, especially the kids.
顔隠して寄り添ってそっと重ねた指と指開いて手の狭い
Isn't this just a wonderful old face? She was accompanied by a gorgeous young girl dressed in Western-style clothes who flatly refused to let me take her picture. I believe this is a Shinto shrine. Shinto is defined in the encyclopedia as the indigenous spirituality of Japan. Most of the people who practice Shinto worship are also Buddhist. Go figure.
書いてみた命がけよと書いて
Here I am, up a tree.
送るつもりのないお手紙
Al Fountain was from aerology. He liked to take pictures, so he often came with me along with another aerologist whose last name was Butts. Aerology department's specialty was weather forecasting. Everyone called them the weather guessers. Fresh fish is a big part of the Japanese diet. I reckon these guys to be Japanese businessmen taking time out to do a little fishing. Who needs a threshing machine when you have a big mallet? This looks like wheat. Whatever it is, this is certainly a labor-intensive way to separate the grain from the chaff. Here's a good sign that we're almost back to Ykosuko and the end of our liberty. Sayonara for a few weeks.